Aloha, it's time for another flyby trip with your favorite bee, the traveling bee Hawaii. Aloha. We're going back up to the Kīlauea Lighthouse and Wildlife Refuge. And as we holo or cruise from Anini Beach, or Wānini as it was historically known, we are looking out at the coast and we see the small islet of Moku'Ae'Ae and Kīlauea Lighthouse. And we're approaching the Kalihiwai River, which means that the Kalihiwai Beach is just on the other side. And we're cruising from Anini Beach to the Kīlauea Lighthouse. So we are crossing over the Kalihiwai Bridge, and soon we will be entering into the town of Kilauea. And as you can see, we've just passed a waterfall that's on the side of the road, and it's dangerous to get out and look at, so you can only see it by car these days, but beautiful nonetheless. And we're passing by some of the beautiful mountain views and rolling green pastures. And we're here at the Kilauea Point and the lighthouse, which is a marine life sanctuary. And we're here by the Kilauea Lighthouse, known today as the Daniel Ka'inoe Kilauea Point Lighthouse. Daniel Ka'inoe was a senator from Hawaii, a veteran, and he was instrumental in raising the private and public funds that were necessary to restore the lighthouse. Now the lighthouse is 52 feet high, sits above a rocky peninsula that's about 180 feet above the ocean there, and below it is Moku'Ae'Ae, the small island that we saw as we were coming up from Wānini Beach. And this is commissioned as the Kilauea Point Light Station, and that was done in 1913. Because Kauaʻi was the northwesternmost island, and people could see it easily from boats and such as they would start to make landfall, the Kilauea Lighthouse was built on top of this peninsula. Kilauea Point is a national wildlife refuge for birds as well as sea life. And the reason for that is because it was already a natural habitat for many birds like a red-footed booby, the shearwaters, and some of the long-tailed tropic birds that we see, and especially the albatross. They are monogamous for life. Their babies need a place to nest, and what's important for them is that they have no predators for those babies because they are flightless for a while. The state bird, which is the Hawaiian nene or the Hawaiian goose, as we'll see up here, was introduced here because it was on the brink of extinction. So the refuge staff helped reintroduce the nene goose, which hang out in many places, especially up in Waimea Canyon at the Kalalau Lookout. So you will see flocks of these geese in many places, and if you don't see them, you'll certainly hear them. And we also have the red-footed booby, which is known as the in Hawaiian. And the chicks, when they're hatched here, have no feathers, and that makes them vulnerable to temperatures. So in order to survive, they always have to have one of the parents at the nest to keep them warm. And within about a month, they get enough of their own feathers to keep their body temperature regulated, and both parents can finally leave the nest. Now we also have the Moku'Ae'Ae, and that's the long-tailed tropic birds. And these have long, noticeable tails, much longer than the rest of them, and they're much smaller birds. We also have red-tailed tropic birds, the KAUA'I. And not only do you see these down here by the shore, but you see them soaring, enjoying the wind currents, sometimes up in the mountains. But again, the cliffs and this refuge, very important, especially for nesting. One of the most important birds that hangs around the shoreline is an uwa'ukani, and these are unique shearwater that make a noise that sounds like a baby crying. And we have a nest of these along what is now the shoreline walk in Kapa'a. So you have to walk with caution, as they are in a heiau or a temple section of the Wailua River area. And here we've come across a female puhala, or the female pandanus, which is an important tree in the Pacific that we're going to talk about. But look at this lovely couple of nene geese, the state bird, nene. The Puhala, or the pandanus tree, as it's also known, has a male and a female tree to it, in which, in many love songs in Hawaii, it represents male and female counterparts in a love relationship. But more importantly, in Polynesia, it was used for thatching, for houses, for bracelets nowadays, which has become a wonderful art and fashion, but also for rugs or mats for sleeping. And thatching was not just done in clumps of the lauhala, lau meaning leaf, but it was done with the fine mats as well. And throughout Pacifica, you will find very skilled, highly skilled pandanus weavers. Ulana lauhala, hehana no'eau. Lauhala weavers. It is a skilled knowledge. Now the female fruit, the hala fruit, is going to turn orange, and it was used as a famine fruit, but its significance today, it's used to represent when perhaps someone passes on, because the word hala means to pass. A person might receive a lei that's made out of materials such as either the leaf or perhaps the female fruit of the hala. They might be receiving those things in the form of a lei, or at a graduation, you may give a graduate a lei of hala. Now coming up is a male hala tree. We have the female here, and this is above the cliff. You can see it's slightly ripening, and the leaves are brown. And that's important. They need to be dried so that they can be soaked and made supple enough so that they can be stripped of thorns and stripped to be soft so that it's easy to weave. And those are the hardest things to do. The weaving is simple compared to the preparation of the lauhala to ulana to weave it. Now we have a male hala tree, and that's the hinano. The hinano of the puhala tree is the male, and it was placed inside the thatched walls of the houses in Puna. And that's where the volcano is located, on the island of Hawaii, and it was placed in the walls to add a fragrance to the house. And I just want to continue on with the other birds that are here. We also have the A'o, which is another shearwater bird that is nesting up here, and so it's important that it's monitored and there are no predators. One of the best birds that you'll most be delighted to see is the moli, or the Laysan albatross, which is the bird that is monogamous for life, and they used to nest on the Princeville golf course. One of the most important birds that's used in Hawaiian poetry often to represent surfers is the Eva bird, and it is the great frigate bird that you will see. It has a unique wing design, so it represents like a V looking type bird. And when you see the bird soaring in the sky, they say it's going to rain. The Eva bird was compared to a surfer because of the way a surfer sits on a surfboard and pops its head up and down as the surf comes up and down, and he waits for a good wave to catch. So many times they are the seabird that's represented to look or appear as if they're surfing. Unfortunately, many of the species, the native bird species throughout the Hawaiian Islands, have become extinct, and here on Kauaʻi is no exception to the rule, that many of the native birds, such as the o'o, have become extinct. Thus, these refuges for wildlife throughout the islands are so important. Mahalo nui loa. Thank you all very much for joining me on this exciting adventure with me, the Travelin' Bee. Aloha.